The Last of Us, a game like no other, met with critical acclaim, a masterpiece, by anyone who played it. But why? Why is it a masterpiece? I never really asked myself when I played the game initially, but now after giving it a proper analysis, I think I can pin down what makes this game exceedingly better than any other game like it. Alright, let's do a recap on some basic information about this game before I dive into a proper analysis. Published by Sony Computer Entertainment and developed by Naughty Dog, this game was released for the PS3 and the PS4. So The Last of Us is an action-adventure survivor horror game with a third-person perspective. In the post-apocalyptic world of The Last of Us, a smuggler named Joel gets wrapped up into delivering a girl named Ellie across the United States in hopes of creating a cure for a worldwide fungal disease known as cordyceps. Together, they must face bandits, zombies, crazy cannibals, and the world around them is its own threats.
I'm alright! Are you okay?
No! You scared the shit out of me!
There's not really much to say because a lot of the information wasn't actually released, but I can say that it took 3 to 4 years to create The Last of Us, and it was a PS3/PS4 exclusive, and it passed the 6 million sales mark on March 14th, 2014. So that was just when it came out for the PS3, so the information for the PS4 release is not too clear, and the cost to make the game was unreported. But due to some other sources, they said that The Last of Us didn't actually make a profit, but this is skeptical. The sources are not clear. Stories don't have to be grand to be immersive, but they don't have to be conventional either. The Last of Us focuses on Joel and Ellie, two individuals together by chance.
Stupid. We'd have more of a chance if you let me help.
I am. You seem to know your way around a gun. You reckon you can handle that?
And their journey across a torn-apart United States, facing infected, bandits, and each other along the way. Joel and Ellie, throughout the game, face struggle after struggle, with next to no mercy to reward them. The game gives the player time to breathe, but that time is nearly always short-lived because the game wants to make the player feel unsafe, no matter how far along the story is. Conventional stories do not usually do this, as they tend to focus more on momentum, meaning the choices and actions of the protagonists build up and end with a climax that builds everything up towards the end of the journey. But in The Last of Us, the momentum in the story isn't built up by what they do, but how their actions strengthen the bond between our two protagonists.
Just so we're clear about back there, it was either him or me.
You're welcome.
The Last of Us is a story about people, no stereotypes, and this makes the game more engaging to the player. Being able to connect with our protagonists in a world you can also portray yourself in, this is what the creators of The Last of Us were striving to create. An experience. Considering that The Last of Us is a story about two people surviving in a post-apocalyptic United States, the bond between our two protagonists, Ellie and Joel, is not just told through cut. They talk together when they traverse and endure the world around them.
There's our bridge. We're a little closer. I think.
Just keep at it. Come on.
And they save each other in fights, whether it be Joel killing a bandit who grabs Ellie, or Ellie throwing a bottle and shooting at enemy NPCs. You don't just see the character development, you feel it. And considering that the story is based upon the relationship between Ellie and Joel, character development take over the story.
We gotta get going.
Lead the way.
I like to believe that the world of The Last of Us is a character in itself. Characters offer up the possibility for the player to be able to portray themselves onto the character. And in a way, you can do the exact same with The Last of Us. The world is brilliantly thought out, sticking to realism and realistic design to further immerse the player. The world takes heavy inspiration from Alan Wiseman's book, The World Without Us, a short story that describes how long it would take for nature to reclaim the world, and the game stays very true to the book's logic. Some of that logic includes, without 24/7 attention, the subway tunnels would get flooded by water. Skyscrapers will begin to fall after 20 years due to the foundation eroding. And after 20 years, the landscape would have been claimed by a fair amount of colonized plants. In the world of The Last of Us, the player traverses the world in zones, such as Boston, Pittsburgh, Jackson City, etc. Not going to spoil the whole game for you guys. Each zone has its own post-apocalyptic subsetting, such as libraries, schools, roads, destroyed homes, sewers, etc. And to each zone, they have their own placement in time, such as winter, summer, fall, spring, in the rain, in the snow. These different zones help contribute to the game's narrative, varies up the settings so that the player doesn't get the feeling of repetition,
No. What?
properly forces a reaction from the player, such as fear, claustrophobia, anticipation, and emptiness, just to name a few. And by using the environments to show what has happened to the world, they use the environments to tell a story, basically. The world is in disarray. The infected are what triggered the world of The Last of Us, so a lot of focus must have been put into making them.
These bullet ants are showing some worrying symptoms. Spores from a parasitic fungus called cordyceps have infiltrated their bodies and their minds. Its infected brain directs this ant upwards. Then, utterly disorientated, it grips a stem with its mandibles. Those afflicted that are discovered by the workers are quickly taken away and dumped far away from the colony. It seems extreme, but this is the reason why. Like something out of science fiction, the fruiting body of the cordyceps erupts from the ant's head. It can take 3 weeks to grow. And when
What The Last of Us does, it takes this biological cycle that's primarily focused on the insect kingdom at this current point in time, who knows, and it translates it to people. The cordyceps cycle in insects has evolved to a human state. Another important fact about the infected is that they have cycles. While they pitched The Last of Us, Sony had a little discussion with Naughty Dog and was all like,
Something robust, precise.
Robust. Precise.
For a company used to making games with lots of climbing and shooting, The Last of Us takes a turn in the opposite direction, being slower and more conserved. With death being easy to achieve, and the death scenes in this game are brutal, which blends in with the fact that The Last of Us never underplays the violence to make the player understand how horrible the things they do in-game actually are. The crafting system in the game is used to create useful items out of materials that are very scarce around the world, making survival and conservation even more important. The game has a heavy emphasis on stealth. You can avoid conflicts and hide from enemy NPCs. Stealth is important. The game is constructed in a way where fighting every NPC in the game will make the game more difficult in the long run. The choices are simple: stealth to conserve your resources, or fight to survive.
Cover me, I'm moving up.
The music was composed by Gustavo Santaolalla, an Argentinian musician known for his minimal compositions, and he uses various instruments to compose the score, including some he was unfamiliar with, giving the game a sense of danger and innocence. And some of the instruments they used were PVC pipes and a detuned guitar, and that's just to name a few. The ambient sounds create fear through silence, and a small but powerful noise like the sound of the ceiling creaking or a bottle being knocked over can really mess with your head. The atmosphere, it stresses the player, and the sound design stresses out the player, making them hesitant and stopped in their tracks, afraid of what's up ahead. The gameplay is fine, but the game? Well, the game has this feature of not being fun, but being stressful as hell. The game wants you to be stressed out. Every corridor you go down, the ambient music just pops up and it just completely messes you up and just messes with your head. The whole game messes with your head. Overall, The Last of Us is just one of the best games ever, because it's not at all a fun game, but it's special. Its focus on grounding the player into such a realistic world is, well, it was unthinkable before they made The Last of Us. I mean, games are supposed to be exaggerated and fun, and they're supposed to be exciting and people will buy them, but The Last of Us does something different where they make the game as realistic as possible. And that just does the world for it.